Crix stepped off the transport ship and immediately felt the difference. Forward Station Epsilon wasn't like the training facilities back home. The air tasted metallic. The walls showed scorch marks from previous attacks. Everything here was functional, nothing decorative. This was a real war zone. His 6 legs carried him awkwardly across the landing platform. The gravity here was lighter than his homeworld, but heavier than the ship. He would need time to adjust. Other soldiers moved around him with purpose. Most were species he recognized from his training manuals, the tall Vraxians with their 4 arms, the floating Quellis who communicated through color changes, the armored Drenthak who looked like walking tanks. And then there were the humans. Crix had heard stories about humans, of course. Everyone had. They were the species that appeared in galactic space only 2 cycles ago. But already they were everywhere, fighting in every conflict, serving as mercenaries, taking contracts that other species refused. They were small compared to most warrior races, soft-skinned. They had only 2 arms and 2 legs. They couldn't fly. They had no natural armor or weapons. By all logic, they should be weak. But the story said otherwise. A human sat on a supply crate near the barracks entrance. He was cleaning a weapon, his movements precise and practiced. His dark hair was cut short. His eyes looked tired with dark circles underneath. But those eyes were sharp, constantly scanning the area. He wore standard combat armor, battered and repaired many times. His name tag read Taman. Crix approached him. The orientation packet said to report to the senior member of your assigned squad. According to his datapad, that was this human. "Excuse me," Crix said, his translator converting his words into standard galactic. "I am Crix. I have been assigned to Defense Squad 7. Are you Taman?" The human looked up. His face was expressionless for a moment, then he nodded. "Yeah, you're the new guy." His voice was flat, tired. "How much combat experience do you have?" "I completed advanced combat training with honors," Crix said proudly. "I scored in the top 15% of my class. I am proficient with 7 different weapon systems and so none," Taman interrupted. He returned to cleaning his weapon. "Training isn't the same as real combat. You'll learn that soon enough." Crix felt his mandibles twitch with annoyance. He had worked hard to get this assignment. He wasn't some incompetent recruit, but before he could respond, an alarm began to wail. The sound was piercing, impossible to ignore. Red lights started flashing along the corridor. Other soldiers immediately began moving. The Vraxians grabbed their weapons. The Quellis changed to a dark purple color. The Drenthak started their armor's power systems. Crix stood frozen. This was happening too fast. He had just arrived. He wasn't ready for actual combat yet. He needed time to settle in, to learn the station layout, to meet his squad properly. Taman stood up in one smooth motion. He attached the weapon to his armor and grabbed 2 more from a nearby rack. He moved toward the defensive positions without rushing, but without hesitation. Other humans were appearing now, all moving with the same purposeful calm. They looked tired. They all had those same dark circles under their eyes. But they moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. "Is this—" Crix started, his voice shaking. "Is this your first battle?" Taman paused and looked back at him. For the first time, the human's expression changed. A small smile appeared on his face, but it wasn't happy. It was the smile of someone who knew a joke that nobody else understood. "First today," Taman said. "Maybe not the last." Then he was gone, moving down the corridor toward the outer walls. Other soldiers rushed past Crix. He stood there, trying to process what the human had said. First today? What did that mean? How could there be more than one battle in a day? Another human appeared beside him. This one was female, shorter than Taman, with her hair pulled back tightly. Her name tag read Jiwoo. She grabbed Crix's arm with surprising strength. "Come on, rookie," she said. "You can stand there and die, or you can follow me and maybe live. Your choice, but make it fast." Crix's training took over. He followed her. They moved through corridors that twisted and turned. Jiwoo knew the way perfectly, never hesitating at intersections. They climbed stairs and crossed open courtyards. Other soldiers were setting up defensive positions. Heavy weapons were being moved into place. Force shields were activating. They reached a section of the outer wall. Taman was already there, looking through a targeting scope at the dark sky. Other squad members were arriving. A Vraxian named Gorks, a Quellis called 17 Colors, a Drenthak who went by Therm, and 3 more humans. "Status?" Jiwoo asked Taman. Raider fleet, Taman said, still looking through his scope. Looks like a standard probe. Maybe 20 ships. They'll test our defenses, then either commit or withdraw. He lowered the scope. Should be over in an hour or two. An hour or two. He said it like it was nothing. Like this was routine. The station's defensive cannons began firing. Bright streaks of energy shot into the sky. Crix could see the enemy ships now, dark shapes against the stars. They were moving fast, weaving between the defensive fire. Some exploded. Others kept coming. Positions. Taman called out. It wasn't a shout. He didn't need to raise his voice. But everyone heard him and obeyed. Crix found himself at a firing port, weapon in hand. He had trained for this. He knew what to do. But training and reality were different things. His hands were shaking. His breathing was too fast. His hearts were beating hard enough that he could hear them. Beside him, Taman loaded his weapon with smooth, practiced movements. There was no wasted motion. No fumbling. He had done this so many times that it was automatic. He looked tired, yes, but not nervous. Not afraid. Just tired. The first enemy drop pods began to fall. They screamed through the atmosphere, leaving trails of fire behind them. They impacted around the station and doors blew open. Enemy soldiers poured out. They were Kresh, a brutal warrior species that took pleasure in destruction. Here they come, Jiwoo said. She didn't sound excited or scared. She sounded like someone commenting on the weather. Taman aimed his weapon. Remember your training, rookie, he said to Crix. Breathe, aim, fire. Don't think too much. The Kresh charged toward the walls, howling their battle cries. They moved in a chaotic wave, dozens of them, armor gleaming, weapons firing. Taman squeezed his trigger. The weapon fired, and a Kresh fell. He adjusted his aim. Fired again. Another one down. He made it look easy. Crix tried to do the same. His first shot missed completely. His second hit a Kresh in the armor, not doing much damage. His third finally brought one down. But by then, Taman had killed 5 more. The battle had begun. And Crix was starting to understand why humans were feared across the galaxy, not because they were the strongest or the fastest or the best armed, but because they did this every single day and they never stopped. The station shook. Not gently. The entire structure vibrated as enemy fire hammered against the shields. Crix had to grip the wall to stay upright. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. An explosion somewhere deeper in the station made a sound like thunder. This was nothing like the training simulations. Taman kept firing. His movements were mechanical, efficient. Aim, fire, adjust, fire again. Each shot found its target. The Kresh kept coming, howling and shooting, but they fell one by one. Beside him, Jiwoo was doing the same thing. The 2 humans worked together without speaking, covering different angles, never getting in each other's way. Crix tried to keep up. He fired at the charging enemies. Sometimes he hit them. Sometimes he missed. His aim was getting worse as panic set in. There were so many of them. How could there be so many? Breathe, Taman said. He wasn't even looking at Crix. His eyes stayed on his targets. You're hyperventilating. Slow it down. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Just like training, Crix tried. It helped a little. His next shot hit a Kresh in the chest. The creature went down. A small success. The other squad members were fighting too. Gorks the Vraxian was using all 4 arms, firing 2 weapons at once while using his other hands to reload. 17 colors had changed to a bright red and was coordinating defensive fire through the communication network. Therm was using a heavy cannon, each shot powerful enough to blow apart multiple enemies. But the humans were different. They didn't have 4 arms. They didn't have natural armor. They didn't have the strength to carry heavy weapons. But they fought with a cold efficiency that was almost frightening. 3 more humans had joined the defensive line. One was checking ammunition supplies. Another was repairing a damaged shield generator while still firing with one hand. The third was treating a wounded Vraxian while keeping her weapon ready. They multitasked in ways that seemed impossible. The Kresh reached the base of the walls. They began placing explosive charges. Taman switched targets immediately, focusing on the demolition specialists. He took them down one after another, but there were too many. One charge went off, blowing a hole in the wall section to the left. Breach in Sector 4, someone shouted over the communications channel. Jiwoo with me, Taman said. He was already moving, not running but moving fast with long, purposeful strides. Crix, hold this position. Gorks is in command here. Then he was gone, Jiwoo right behind him. They disappeared into the station's interior, heading toward the breach. Crix felt a moment of panic. The humans were leaving, but Gorks moved into Taemin's position and kept firing, and Crix realized this was normal. This was how they operated. Minutes passed. It felt like hours. The Kresh kept attacking. Crix's arms were getting tired. He had fired more shots in the last 20 minutes than in all his training combined. His weapon was hot. His shoulder hurt from the recoil, but the enemy kept coming. Then the Kresh at the breach started retreating, not running away but pulling back in an organized manner. Through the scope, Crix could see why. Bodies, lots of bodies. Taemin and Jiwoo had sealed the breach, and the Kresh who had entered were all dead. The two humans returned to the wall. They weren't wounded. They were breathing hard but not collapsed. Taemin's armor had new scorch marks. Jiwoo was reloading her weapon. They took their positions and resumed firing as if nothing had happened. How many? Gorks asked. 15, Taemin replied. Maybe 16. Lost count, 15 enemies. 2 humans, and the humans had won. Crix's mandibles clicked in disbelief. The battle continued. The Kresh sent in more waves. They tried different tactics. They tried overwhelming force. They tried stealth infiltration. They tried targeting the shield generators. Nothing worked. The defenders held every position. The humans seemed to be everywhere at once, plugging gaps, reinforcing weak points, treating the wounded. A Vraxian near Crix took a hit. The soldier went down, screaming. One of the human medics was there in seconds. She worked fast, applying emergency treatments, injecting medicines, sealing wounds. She talked the whole time, her voice calm and steady. "You're okay. I've got you. This is going to hurt for a second. There we go. Stay with me. You're doing great. This'll stop the bleeding." Almost done, the Vraxian stopped screaming. The medic finished her work and moved to the next casualty. She didn't rest. She didn't celebrate. She just moved to the next soldier who needed help. Crix was starting to understand something. The humans weren't stronger than other species. They weren't tougher. They weren't better armed, but they kept going. When other species would rest, the humans kept working. When other species would panic, the humans stayed calm. They treated this desperate battle like it was a job. A hard job, a dangerous job, but still just a job. Time became strange. Crix couldn't tell if minutes or hours were passing. He fired, he reloaded. He fired again. His body was moving automatically now. His conscious mind was somewhere else, somewhere far away from this wall and this battle. Taemin's voice brought him back. Incoming aerial units. Look up, Crix looked up. Enemy fighters were diving toward the station. They had gotten past the outer defenses somehow. They were small and fast, and they were heading straight for the wall section where Crix stood. Anti-air teams engage, Gorks shouted. Specialized weapons turned skyward. They fired, filling the air with bright tracers. Some of the fighters exploded. Others kept coming. They were too close, moving too fast. One fighter was heading directly at Crix's position. He could see it growing larger, could see the weapons on its wings starting to glow. It was going to fire. He was going to die. Taemin moved. It was the fastest Crix had seen any human move. Taemin threw himself at Crix, knocked him down, and they both fell behind the wall's protective barrier. A second later, the fighters' weapons fired. Energy beams tore through the space where Crix had been standing. The wall exploded. Debris rained down. Something heavy landed on Crix's leg. Then the fighter exploded too. Someone had hit it. It spiraled down and crashed into the ground beyond the walls. Taemin stood up. He grabbed the debris on Crix's leg and lifted it off. "You hurt?" Crix checked. His leg was bruised but not broken. "No, you saved my life." "That's the job," Taemin said. He returned to his position and started firing again. The aerial attack ended. The fighters that survived retreated. The ground forces began to pull back too. Slowly, the intensity of fire decreased. The howling of the Kresh grew distant. The explosions became less frequent. After what felt like an eternity, the shooting stopped. Silence fell over the wall. It was strange and loud in its own way. Crix's ears were ringing. Smoke drifted across the battlefield. The ground outside the walls was littered with Kresh bodies and destroyed equipment. "Status report," Gorks said into his communicator. Responses came from all sectors. Casualties, damage assessments, ammunition counts. The station had held Crix slumped against the wall. His entire body was shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him exhausted. He had survived his first real battle. He wanted to celebrate. He wanted to sleep. He wanted to cry. Taman checked his weapon. He counted his remaining ammunition. He made some notes on a data pad. Then he picked up his weapon and started walking along the wall, checking on other defenders, examining the damaged sections. Jiwoo appeared beside Crix. She offered him a water container. "Drink, you'll get dehydrated." Crix drank. The water tasted better than anything he had ever had. "Is it over?" Jiwoo looked at the sky. "This wave is over. They'll be back." "When?" She shrugged. "Could be hours. Could be days. Depends on how badly they want this station." She started checking her own equipment. "Get some rest while you can. Eat something. Check your gear. Next time might be worse." Crix wanted to ask more questions, but Jiwoo walked away. All the humans were doing the same thing. Checking equipment, treating wounds, repairing damage. None of them were celebrating. None of them were relaxing. They moved like the battle wasn't over, just paused. And then Crix understood what Taemin had meant. First today. This was just the first battle today. There would be more, maybe many more, and the humans would keep fighting. They wouldn't stop. They couldn't stop, because that was what they did. That was what made them human. 3 hours passed. Crix spent them in a state of constant nervousness. He tried to rest like Jiwoo had suggested. He found a corner in the barracks and sat down. His body was exhausted. His muscles ached. But his mind wouldn't stop racing. Every sound made him jump. Every alarm made his heart race. He couldn't relax. The humans were different. They ate. They actually sat down and ate food, talking quietly among themselves. Taemin was reviewing tactical reports on a data pad while he chewed on some kind of ration bar. Jiwoo was cleaning her weapon for the third time. Another human, a tall male named Dong-hyun, was actually sleeping, just lying on a bench, eyes closed, breathing slowly. How could he sleep? Crix tried to eat. The food tasted like nothing. He forced it down anyway. His training instructor's voice echoed in his memory. "A soldier who doesn't eat is a soldier who dies." Simple advice. Hard to follow when your stomach was twisted in knots. Gorks approached him. The Vraxian looked tired. His forearms moved slowly and he sat down heavily. "First combat is always hard," he said. "You did well. Better than my first time." "I was terrified," Crix admitted. "We all were. We all are." Gorks looked at the humans. "Except maybe them. I don't think they feel fear the same way." "They must feel it," Crix said. "All species feel fear. It's basic survival instinct." "Oh, they feel it," said 17 colors floating nearby. The Quellis had changed to a soft blue color, indicating contemplation. "I can detect emotional states through bioelectric readings. The humans definitely experience fear. Their stress hormones spike during combat. Their heart rates increase. But they don't let it control them. They function through it." Therm the Drenthak rumbled in agreement. "I fought alongside humans before. They are strange. They get tired, they get scared, they get hurt, but they keep fighting. I have seen Drenthak warriors, the strongest in the galaxy, fall from exhaustion, but humans keep going." The alarm started again. The sound cut through the barracks like a blade. Everyone who had been resting jumped to their feet. Crix felt his whole body go cold. Not again. Not so soon. They had just finished fighting. How could there be another attack already? But the humans were moving. Taemin set down his datapad. Jiwoo stood up from her weapon maintenance. Dong-hyun opened his eyes, completely alert in an instant. They grabbed their gear and headed for the doors. "Second wave," Taemin said. His voice showed no emotion. "Probably larger than the first. They're testing how depleted we are." They reached the walls again. The sun had moved across the sky. It was afternoon now. Crix's chronometer said 4 hours had passed since the first attack. 4 hours? That was barely enough time to recover from training exercises, let alone actual combat. The enemy was coming again. More ships this time. Larger ships. They weren't testing defenses now. They were coming with force. "Positions!" Gorks commanded. Everyone moved to their assigned spots. Crix noticed that several defenders from the first battle were missing. Either wounded or dead. New soldiers had taken their places. They looked fresh, but Crix knew that wouldn't last long. The enemy drop pods began falling again. More of them this time. They impacted all around the station. A coordinated strike on multiple positions. The Kresh poured out, attacking from all sides at once. The battle started immediately. No build-up this time, just instant chaos. Weapons fire, explosions, screaming. The Kresh were more organized now. They had learned from the first attack. They were using better tactics. Krix fired his weapon. His aim was better now. He knew what to expect, but his body was already tired from the first battle. His arms felt heavy. His reactions were slower. Each shot took more effort than it should. Beside him, Taemin fired with the same mechanical efficiency as before. If he was tired, it didn't show in his shooting. Each shot was as precise as the last. Jiwoo was the same, and Donghyun, and all the other humans, the Vraxians, were struggling. Gorks was still effective, but his movements were slower. His forearms, which had been so quick before, now moved like they were fighting through water. The other Vraxians were the same. 17 colors was flashing colors rapidly, a sign of stress. The Quellis were floating lower than before, their energy depleted. Therm was still fighting with his heavy cannon, but even his armor's power systems were running lower. The sounds of his shots were slightly quieter. The humans showed no such decline. An hour into the second battle, Krix realized something terrifying. The humans weren't slowing down. They were maintaining the same pace as when they had started. The same accuracy. The same efficiency. They moved like machines, but they were flesh and blood just like everyone else. How were they doing this? A Vraxian collapsed. Not wounded, just exhausted. The soldier fell to the ground, all four arms trembling, unable to continue. A human medic rushed over, checked the soldier, and injected something. "Exhaustion," she called out. "Get him to the medical bay." More soldiers fell, not from enemy fire, but from their own bodies giving out. The Quellis started making mistakes in their coordination. The Drenthak armor systems began shutting down to conserve power. Even Gorks had to step back, breathing heavily, his body reaching its limit. But the humans kept fighting. A new sound came from above. Krix looked up and saw something that made his blood run cold. A ship, a big one. It was descending through the atmosphere, larger than any of the attack craft. It was a carrier. "Command, this is Defense Squad 7, Taemin said into his communicator. His voice was still calm. "We have a carrier deploying. Looks like it's carrying heavy drop troops. We're going to need air support." The response came quickly. "Acknowledged. Air support en route. ETA 15 minutes. 15 minutes. The carrier was already deploying its troops. Massive armored soldiers were dropping toward the station. They were twice the size of the Kresh. Their armor was thicker. Their weapons were bigger, and there were dozens of them. "Fall back to secondary positions," Gorks ordered, his voice strained. "We can't hold against those things in our current state." The defenders began retreating, moving back to more fortified positions deeper in the station. It was the right tactical choice. But it meant giving up ground. It meant letting the enemy get closer. Taemin didn't move. Neither did Jiwoo or Donghyun. The three humans stayed at the wall. "Did you hear the order?" Gorks shouted. "Fall back!" "We heard it," Taemin said. He switched his weapon to a different power setting. "But if those heavy troops get through here, they'll tear through the secondary positions. We need to thin them out first." "You can't hold that position," Gorks said. "There are too many." "You're exhausted." "We're always exhausted," Jiwoo said. She was loading armor-piercing rounds into her weapon. "Doesn't change the job." The heavy troops hit the ground. They immediately started toward the wall. Their movements were slow but unstoppable. Regular weapons bounced off their armor. They walked through explosions like they were nothing. Taemin aimed carefully. He fired. His shot hit the weak point where a heavy trooper's helmet met its chest armor. The creature went down. He aimed again. Another shot. Another trooper fell. Jiwoo and Donghyun were doing the same, finding weak points, taking careful shots. Each one had to count because these enemies were much harder to kill. They worked together, calling out targets, coordinating their fire. Krix watched from the secondary position. He had retreated with the others. He had followed orders. But watching the three humans fight alone against impossible odds made him feel something he had never felt before. Shame. He stood up. "What are you doing?" Gorks asked. "I'm a soldier," Krix said. "Soldiers fight." He ran back to the wall. His legs were tired. His arms were tired. His whole body was screaming at him to stop. But he didn't. He reached the wall and took position near Taemin. "You should have stayed back," Taemin said. "Probably," Krix replied. He raised his weapon and fired at a heavy trooper. His shot missed the weak point but hit the armor, at least getting the creature's attention. Taemin smiled. It was small and brief, but it was there. "All right then. Aim for the joints. Between the armor plates. That's where they're vulnerable. Crix adjusted his aim and tried again. This time his shot hit a joint. The heavy trooper stumbled but kept coming. Taemin finished it off with a shot to the helmet. Other defenders saw what was happening. Adrenthak powered his armor back up and returned to the wall. 2 Vraxians followed. Then 17 colors. They were tired. They were nearly broken. But they came back anyway, because the humans had shown them something. You don't stop fighting just because you're tired. You don't give up just because the odds are impossible. You keep going. That's what soldiers do. The air support arrived. Human pilots. Of course they were human. 2 fighter craft screamed over the station and began engaging the carrier. The lead pilot's voice came over the radio. "This is Hana. Heard you guys could use some help down there." "Little busy to chat, Hana," Jiwoo replied while shooting. "But yeah, help would be nice. On it. Be advised this is my 4th sortie today. Running low on munitions. Make it count. 4th sortie." The pilot had been flying combat missions all day. Just like Taemin had been fighting battles all day. Just like all the humans had been working non-stop. And they were still going. The fighters made their attack runs. Missiles streaked from their wings and slammed into the carrier. Explosions bloomed across its hull. The carrier began listing. Damaged but not destroyed. It started to retreat. Pullen night fell on forward station Epsilon. The darkness brought no rest. The station's lights created harsh shadows across the walls and corridors. Crix sat in the medical bay receiving treatment for exhaustion. Medical staff moved between beds, treating dozens of soldiers who had simply run out of strength. Most of them were not human. The humans were still at their posts. Still checking weapons, still repairing defenses, still preparing. Crix had watched Taemin through the window. The man had been fighting for over 12 hours now. 2 major battles and several smaller skirmishes. He should be unconscious. He should be in a medical bed just like Crix. But he was standing at the wall, alert, ready. The medic treating Crix was Aquelis. She gave him an injection that helped with the fatigue. "Your body needs rest," she said, her colors showing concern. "You've pushed yourself beyond safe limits." "The humans haven't rested either," Crix said. "The humans are different." The medic's colors shifted to something like confusion. "Their bodies work differently. We've studied them. Their physiology is built for endurance. They evolved as persistence hunters on their homeworld. They would chase prey for days until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. No burst of speed. No overwhelming strength. Just relentless pursuit until nothing could escape them." "That sounds terrifying," Crix said. "It is," the medic agreed. "Most species evolve to either fight hard and fast or to run away. Humans evolved to never stop. In galactic terms, they're not the strongest or the fastest, but they're the most stubborn. They simply refuse to quit." The alarm sounded again. Crix tried to stand. His legs wouldn't support him. The medic pushed him back down. "You can't fight in this condition. You'll die." "I'm a soldier," Crix protested weakly. "You're a patient. Stay in bed. That's an order." Through the window, Crix watched the humans move to their positions. They moved quickly but not frantically. They had done this so many times today that it was routine. Taemin checked his weapon one more time and took his position. Jiwoo was beside him. Donghyun was coordinating with other squads on the communications network. The 3rd wave hit. This time the enemy came with everything. Ships filled the sky. Drop pods fell like rain. The Kresh were screaming their battle cries, but now they were mixed with other species. The attackers had brought reinforcements from across their empire. There were heavy troops, flying units, siege engines. Everything they had, the station's defenses fired. The sky lit up with weapons fire. Explosions created temporary suns. The noise was constant, a rolling thunder that shook the entire structure. Crix could feel the vibrations through his bed. The human defenders were badly outnumbered now. Most of the alien soldiers were either wounded, exhausted, or dead. Squad 7's position was being held by Taemin, Jiwoo, Donghyun, and only 3 other soldiers who could still fight. Against hundreds of enemies, Crix watched through the window, unable to help. Unable to do anything except witness. The attackers reached the wall. They started climbing. Taemin switched to a different weapon, something designed for close combat. When the first Kresh came over the wall, Taemin met it with practiced efficiency. The enemy died before it could finish climbing over. More came. They kept coming, a tide of bodies and rage. The three humans fought with a cold precision that Crix had never seen before. They weren't fighting angry. They weren't fighting scared. They were fighting like workers doing a difficult job. Move, strike, move again. Block, counter, eliminate the threat. Over and over and over. A crash managed to wound Jiwoo. A blade cut across her arm. She grunted in pain, switched her weapon to her other hand, and shot the attacker in the face. Then she wrapped her wounded arm quickly and kept fighting. She didn't even pause. Didn't call for a medic. Didn't step back. Just wrapped it and continued. They're going to die, Crix whispered. Probably, the medic said. Her colors were dark with sadness. But they'll die fighting. That's what humans do. An explosion rocked the station. Part of the wall collapsed. Debris rained down. The three humans disappeared in the dust cloud. For a moment, Crix thought they were gone. But then they emerged from the dust, still standing, still fighting. Donghyun's armor was cracked. Taemin was limping. Jiwoo was bleeding from multiple cuts. But they stood together and held the position. The enemy kept coming. They couldn't understand why three soldiers wouldn't break. Couldn't understand why they wouldn't run. In the Kresh culture, warriors who were outnumbered this badly would either die gloriously or retreat to fight another day. But the humans did neither. They just stood there and fought, and fought, and fought. Reinforcements arrived. Not from the station. From orbit, a human military ship had been nearby and received the distress signal. Drop pods with human marines landed behind the attackers. Fresh soldiers. Not exhausted, not wounded. They hit the Kresh from behind with devastating effect. But what amazed Crix was that Taemin, Jiwoo, and Donghyun didn't relax. They didn't step back and let the fresh troops take over. They kept fighting. They coordinated with the new arrivals and pressed the attack. They had been fighting for 15 hours straight, but when help arrived, they kept going. The battle turned. The Kresh found themselves trapped between the station defenders and the new human forces. They tried to retreat, but the humans pursued them, not with rage, not with excitement, with the same cold efficiency they had shown all day. They eliminated the enemy systematically, methodically, thoroughly. When the third wave finally broke, the sky was starting to lighten. Morning was coming. Crix had been at the station for 1 day, 24 hours. In that time, he had fought in 2 battles and collapsed from exhaustion. The humans had fought in 3 major battles and countless smaller engagements. And they were still standing. Taemin walked back into the station. His limp was worse now. His armor was damaged in a dozen places. His face was covered in dust and dried blood. He looked like he should be dead. But he was walking. He was functioning. He was still a soldier. He entered the medical bay to check on wounded squad members. He saw Crix in the bed. "How are you feeling?" Taemin asked. "Useless," Crix said honestly. "You've been fighting all day and night." "I fought twice and collapsed." Taemin sat down slowly. His movements suggested that everything hurt. "It's not about being weak or strong. It's about adaptation. Your species evolved differently than mine. Your bodies are built for different things." "What are humans built for?" Crix asked. "What evolutionary advantage lets you do this?" Taemin was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice tired but steady. "My ancestors hunted animals on Earth, big animals. Stronger than humans, faster than humans, better armed than humans with horns and claws. But humans had one advantage. We could sweat. We could regulate our body temperature. So we would chase these animals. Not fast, just steady. For hours. For days sometimes. The animal would run away, would use all its energy in a burst of speed. Then it would have to stop and rest. But humans didn't stop. We just kept coming. Always coming. Never stopping. Eventually, the prey would collapse from heat exhaustion. And then we would kill it." He looked at Crix with those tired, dark-circled eyes. "That's what we are. Persistence predators. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. But we never stop. In war, that means we can fight longer than anyone else. We can take more shifts. We can handle more battles. Other species fight until they're exhausted. We fight until the job is done. That's our evolutionary advantage. We're too stubborn to quit." The alarm sounded again. Taemin stood up. He winced as his injured leg took his weight. He picked up his weapon and checked it. The motion was automatic. He had done it 1,000 times today. "This is the 4th wave?" Crix asked in horror. "5th, actually," Taemin corrected. "There was a small probe force around midnight. You were unconscious." He started walking toward the door. The Marines from the ship will handle most of it. But every gun helps. How? Crix asked. The question came out as a plea. How do you keep going? Taman paused at the door. He looked back. For the first time, his expression showed something other than tired efficiency. He looked almost sympathetic. Because someone has to, he said simply. Because this station protects civilian colonies. Because if we stop, people die. Because that's what soldiers do. We keep going until the job is done. Not until we're tired. Not until it's convenient. Until the job is done, he walked out. Through the window, Crix watched him return to the wall. Jiwoo was already there. Her wounded arm now properly bandaged but still using her weapon. Donghyun was coordinating defensive positions. The fresh Marines from the ship were in position too. The enemy came again. They attacked the walls. They fired their weapons. They died against the human defenses. And the humans stood there, exhausted, wounded, running on nothing but will, and they fought. Crix watched and finally understood. The galaxy had many strong species, many fierce warriors, many advanced civilizations, but humanity had something else. Something that couldn't be measured in strength or speed or firepower. They had endurance. The simple, terrible, unstoppable endurance to keep fighting no matter what. They were predators who never stopped chasing. Soldiers who never stopped fighting. Workers who never stopped working. And that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Back. The sun rose over Forward Station Epsilon. Its light touched the scarred walls and burned ground. The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke drifted across the landscape. The wreckage of ships and equipment littered the area. Bodies were being collected by recovery teams. The enemy had finally withdrawn completely, their fleet retreating beyond sensor range. The battle was over. For now. Crix had been released from the medical bay. His body was still tired, but the treatments had helped. He could walk again. He could function. As he stepped outside, he expected to see soldiers celebrating. Expected to see people resting. Expected to see the defenders finally taking a break after 24 hours of constant combat. Instead, he saw humans working. Taimin was at the wall, examining the damaged sections. He was taking notes on a data pad, marking which areas needed immediate repair and which could wait. His movements were slow and careful. Every step looked painful, but he was working. Jiwoo was checking ammunition supplies. She was counting what they had used, what remained, what needed to be resupplied. Her wounded arm was in a proper sling now, but she was using her good arm to lift heavy containers and mark inventory. Donghyun was in the command center, filing after-action reports. Writing down what had worked, what hadn't, what they should do differently next time. His fingers moved across the keyboard steadily, recording every detail while it was fresh. The human Marines from the rescue ship were doing the same things. Some were repairing damaged equipment. Others were reinforcing weak points in the defenses. A few were cooking food in the mess hall, preparing meals for everyone. They worked with the same calm efficiency they had shown in battle. The alien soldiers who had recovered enough to move were resting, sitting, lying down, sleeping, celebrating their survival. Doing what soldiers do after a battle. But not the humans. The humans worked. Crix approached Taimin. Shouldn't you be resting? Taimin looked up from his data pad. His face was bruised. His eyes were even more tired than before. But he was alert. Rest later, work now. These walls won't repair themselves. The battle is over, Crix said. This battle is over, Taimin corrected. He pointed at his data pad. See this damage? If we don't fix it, the next attack will break through here. See this weapon emplacement? It's offline. If we don't repair it, we'll have a gap in our defensive coverage. Rest is important. But preparation is more important. He returned to his work. Crix watched him for a moment, then asked the question that had been bothering him. How long will you keep doing this? Working without rest? Until the job is done, Taimin said. It was the same answer as before. Always the same answer. Crix picked up some tools. Then I'll help. Taimin looked surprised. You should rest. You're not built for this like we are. No, Crix agreed. I'm not. But I'm a soldier, and soldiers do their jobs. He moved to the damaged wall section. Tell me what needs to be fixed. For a moment, Taimin just looked at him. Then that small smile appeared again. All right, start with sealing those cracks. Use the repair compound in the green containers. Apply it thick. It'll harden in about 10 minutes. They worked together. It was hard. Crix's body protested every movement. His muscles ached. His hands shook. But he kept going. If the humans could do this after fighting all day and night, he could do this after a few hours of rest. Other alien soldiers saw what was happening. Gorks limped over, his forearms still weak but functional. "What are you doing?" "Repairs," Crix said. "You should be resting. So should Taemin. So should all the humans. But they're not. They're working. Because the job isn't done." Crix applied more repair compound. "If they can keep going, so can I." Gorks was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up tools and started helping. His movements were slow and painful, but he worked. 17 colors floated over. The Quellis was a pale, tired color. "This is not logical. We should rest and recover." "Probably," Jiwoo said from nearby. She was still counting ammunition. "But logic doesn't hold walls. Work does." She finished with one container and moved to the next. "Help or rest. Your choice. No judgment either way." 17 colors changed to a determined orange color and began helping with repairs. More soldiers joined. Therm powered up his armor and started moving debris. Other Vraxians helped. Even some of the wounded who could still walk came out and did what they could. The humans had shown them something, had taught them something without words. You don't stop when you're tired. You stop when the work is done. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. The station slowly transformed. Damaged walls were repaired. Destroyed equipment was replaced. Supply lines were reorganized. Defensive positions were strengthened. The station that had been barely standing was becoming strong again. Crix worked until he physically couldn't anymore. His body simply stopped responding. He sat down hard, unable to take another step. A human medic appeared immediately. "Exhaustion again," she said. "Not as bad as yesterday, but you need rest now." "Real rest." "The work isn't done," Crix protested weakly. "The critical work is done," Taemin said. He had appeared beside the medic. "You did good work, now rest. Let your body recover." "That's an order," Crix wanted to argue. But Taemin was right. He had pushed himself to his limit. He let the medic help him to his feet and guide him back to the barracks. As he walked away, he looked back. Taemin was returning to the wall. Still working, still checking, still preparing. How much longer would he keep going? When would he finally rest? The answer came 2 hours later. Crix was lying on his bunk, trying to sleep but not quite managing it. He heard movement in the barracks. Opening his eyes, he saw humans entering. Taemin, Jiwoo, Donghyun, the other human soldiers. They were finally taking a break. They moved slowly, removing armor, checking for injuries they hadn't noticed during the fighting. They were talking quietly among themselves. Not about the battles, about normal things, food, entertainment, plans for when their deployment ended. Human things. Taemin sat on a bunk near Crix. He was cleaning his weapon again. Even now, even during rest, he was maintaining his equipment. The habit was so ingrained that he probably didn't even think about it. "Can I ask you something?" Crix said quietly. "Sure," Taemin replied. "How many battles do you fight in a normal week?" Taemin thought about it. "Depends on the posting. Here at Forward Station Epsilon, maybe 20 to 30 engagements per week. Some small, some large. Other postings are quieter. Some are busier. 20 to 30 battles per week. That was more combat than most soldiers saw in a year. How do you stay sane?" "Define sane," Jiwoo said from another bunk. She was wrapping her wounded arm with fresh bandages. "We're all a little crazy. Have to be to do this job. But we cope," Taemin added. "We have each other. We have routines. We have purposes. We're protecting people, keeping civilians safe. That matters. That makes the exhaustion worth it." "Do you ever get used to it?" Crix asked. "The constant fighting?" "No," Taemin said honestly. "It never gets easy. Every battle is still dangerous. Still scary. Still exhausting. You don't get used to it. You just get better at dealing with it." He finished cleaning his weapon and set it aside. Then he lay down on his bunk. "But you learn something important. You learn that your limits are further than you think. When you think you can't go anymore, you usually can. Just a little more. Just one more step. One more shot. One more repair. Humans are good at finding that extra bit. That's our advantage." Jiwoo was already asleep. Donghyun was reading something on a data pad, his eyes barely staying open. Other humans were in various states of rest. They had finally stopped. The work was done enough. The defenses were strong enough. They could rest now. Crix closed his eyes. He thought about everything he had learned in the past day. About endurance. About persistence. About doing the job no matter how tired you were. About human stubbornness that simply refused to quit. He understood now why humans were everywhere in the galaxy. Why they took the hardest contracts. Why they served in the worst war zones. Not because they were the strongest or the toughest, but because they would keep going when everyone else had stopped. They would hold positions that should be impossible to hold. They would fight battles that should be impossible to win. They would work when they should be resting. All because they were too stubborn to quit. The alarm sounded. Crix's eyes snapped open. Not again. Please, not again. His body couldn't take another battle. He was barely recovered from the last one, but Taimin was already standing. Already grabbing his weapon. Already moving toward the door. The other humans were doing the same. Tired, wounded, exhausted but moving. Is this your second battle today? Crix asked. The words came out before he could stop them. Taimin looked back. That same small smile appeared. Second today. Maybe not the last, and he was gone. Out the door. Heading to the walls. Ready to fight again, because that was what humans did. They fought. They worked. They persisted. They never stopped. Crix lay in his bunk and listened to the sounds of battle starting again. Weapons fire, explosions, commands being shouted. The humans were holding the walls again. Fighting again. Protecting the station again. He thought about his training instructors back home. They had taught him about tactics and weapons and combat theory, but they had never taught him about this, about the simple, terrifying truth of human endurance.